all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. O dagla dang war je pe dra no pa je pe ge. Dar pa dang tam she ken pe bar du jo par je pa tam she ki so je pe. Ma nam ka dam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang den. Dug now dong drell nor du la na me pa yang dag pa zog pe shang ju brin po she to pa ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Deshe du sang ma ge gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Ma she bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Du de ring ne song te ni ma sang ta sam gi bar du lu na gi sam ge wa la ko. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye chodang so ki cho nam la. Shangju bardu dagni kapsuchi. Dagi jinso ki pe sonam gi. Drola penshir sangye ju pasho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Manam kadam yam pe sem chen tam she de wa dang de we gurdang dem pa jor chi. Dug now dang da now gi gu dang dra wa jor chi. Dug now me pe de wa dang mi dra wa jor chi. Nay ring jag dang ni dang dra wei dang nam la ne pa jor chi. We'll recite the 100-syllable purification mantra of Vajrasattva. in English 1 time and 3 times in the Sanskrit. Om Vajrasattva Samaya. Help to protect my vow, to purify myself. May you remain firm with me. Grant me the complete satisfaction. Grow with me. Be loving towards me. Grant me the attainments to master the powers beyond body and nature. Show me all the deeds of body, speech, and mind. Make my mind heart good, virtuous, and auspicious. Revel in the bliss of the 4 joys, O Blessed One, who embodies the essence within me. Do not abandon me. Grant me the realization of the indestructible nature. Make me one with you. Thus I signify my unity with non-duality. Ah. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattvaha Om Bajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Sattva Tenopa Dristadredo Me Bhava Suto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anuraktu Me Bhava Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsan Shriya Kuruham Ha 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 ho Bhagavan Saratada Gata Vajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Sattvaha. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Anything relating to the King of Sutra, the King of Samadhi that we've been talking about here? Okay then. So where we left off, we skipped last week, and so we're continuing to talk about the qualities of the Buddha, which is chapter 3, and in particular 3.4 and 3.5. So we started a little bit with 3.4, but we didn't really finish. And I'd like to be able to really speak about, or have everybody talk about, the skandas, the dhtuts, and ayatanas, because I'm willing to bet that most of us don't have a firm understanding of what the skandas, dhtuts, and ayatanas are, and we recite them, we talk about them, and but not in their descriptions in many of the practices and prayers. So I'd like to go over that with everybody. So to get ourselves started, Alex, you have your book. Can you recite for us, please? Can you recite 3.4 and 3.5? So everybody's got it fresh in their memory, and then we can go and we can continue our conversation where we left off.
Yes, I hope I am able to find it. Now, I just wanted to mention at the beginning, there is like a series of outlines for each chapter that are probably added by translators. And I don't know how much value in those like summaries of outlines of those chapters, but I think maybe it would be good to read them as well
Well, it is very good to
on
read
in the book.
them. I agree. It's very good to read them. And if you want to include that tonight, if you'll read the outline summary, let me see here.
It's like I-36 in the beginning for the introduction.
Well, I think if you go to you want to read all that? Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3?
Yeah, maybe it will be good as a summary
All right, go
to
ahead and read that. Chapter
into the.
1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. So we're on in the book 1 of book
Mhm.
1 of book 5. It's I.36, I.37, and I.38. So if you read those three, and then if you'll go to 3.4 where we left off, and 3.5 in the main root text, that'll be good. Okay.
Okay. So outline of each chapters. So chapter 1, the introduction. The Buddha Shakyamuni is on the Vulture Peak Mountain outside Rajagrha,
Great.
Rajagra, Rajagriha with a great gathering of bhikshus and bodhisattvas. Kandraprabha asked him for instruction. The Buddha states that evenness of mind is the one quality that will bring enlightenment and the attainment of the Samadhi, called the revealed equality of the nature of all phenomena, which is described as having an array of qualities that covers all the various aspects of the path. On hearing this, a multitude of beings attain various stages of realization. The earth shakes and a radiance illuminates the universe. Okay, outline of chapter 2, which is called Shalendra Raja. The Buddha tells Kandraprabha in both prose and verse how in the past life he was Chakravartin, named Bhishmotara, who for quintillions of eons honored successive Buddhas on Vulture Peak Mountain and received the teaching of this sutra from all of them. The last of those Buddhas was Shalendra Raja. The Buddha says that serving the Buddhas in this way is necessary for the attainment of Buddhahood. He says that those who uphold this sutra in the future will be reborn in Sukhavati. Now outline of chapter 3. Praise of the Buddha's qualities. The Buddha tells Kandraprabha about the qualities of Tathagata and explains that they can be attained through this sutra. Then, in verse, he describes his act of generosity in past lives and his search for this sutra. He describes the benefits of the sutra and condemns those in future who teach but do not practice. Kandraprabha vows to uphold this teaching in the future. And the next would be chapter 4 on Samadhi. But we
Please,
haven't
let's not
come
go
there
that
yet.
far. Let's stay on
Yeah.
chapter 3.
And did you say starting from verse 3.5?
3.4.
3.4.
3.4 and 3.5.
Okay. The Tathagata is the natural result of merit. He is the inevitable result of roots of merit. He is adorned by patience. He is the manifestation of a treasure of merit. He is beautified by the excellent primary signs of a great being. He has blossomed flowers of the secondary signs of a great being. He is exemplary in his conduct. His appearance is never disagreeable. He brings joy to those motivated by faith. He is invincible in his wisdom. He has the invulnerability of the strengths. He is the teacher of all beings. He is the father of all bodhisattvas. He is the king of all noble individuals. He is the caravan leader for those beginning on their journey. He is immeasurable in his wisdom. He is inconceivable in his eloquence. He is pure in his voice. He is delightful in his speech. He is lovely in his physical form. He is unequaled in body. He is unstained by the desire realm. He is unsullied by the form realm. He is unadulterated by the formless realm. He is free from suffering. He is liberated from the skandas. He is separated from the dhtuts. He has restrained the ayatanas. He has cut through the knots. He is free from torment. He is released from craving. He has crossed over the great river. He is complete in his wisdom. He is established in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavans of the past, future, and present. He does not remain in Nirvana. He resides at the summit of existence. He is on the level of seeing all beings. Young man, those are the Buddha qualities of a Tathagata. And next verse, 3.5. If Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, who possesses these Buddha qualities and their praise, and who have continuous confidence of speech based on this Samadhi, teaches correctly the Buddha qualities and praises of the Tathagata, the Arhat, the perfectly enlightened Buddha, there will be no loss of meaning or words, and all their words will come forth as those of the Buddha. Then, at that time, the Bhagavan, in order to make the meaning clear, gave a detailed teaching by chanting the following extensive verses to the youth Kandraprabha.
Very good. Thank you. So this is where we left off a couple of weeks ago. And so does anybody have any comments or questions about anything that Alex just recited? And in particular in 3.4, I'd just like to point out where I think my notes stop. I think we stopped at the bottom of the first page, where it says, he is unadulterated by the formless realm. He is free from suffering. He is liberated from the skandas. So I don't think we've gone into a discussion with everybody on the skandas, the dhtuts, and the ayatanas. So does anybody have any comments or questions that you'd like to go over before we get started? Okay, so everybody understands
I,
that.
I just I just want to say I think that by my recollection we were discussing the ayatanas and dhtuts
Yes,
and something about the knots, but I don't know if uh we maybe even were briefly talking about torments and cravings and stuff.
yes, I think so, and that's why we're going back over this because we didn't really do a thorough job, and everybody wasn't with us. So these are important things, and so I think a major point in this is we have all the ingredients. We have that Buddha nature within ourselves, and that it's a matter of being able to refine those natures that we have, those, and to be able to cut through all the blockages, all the things that are obscuring those that nature to come through. So this is why it's important, and it's so we have Buddha nature, but it's blocked up by our emotions and by our wrong thought and so on like that. So it says he is unadulterated. I'm going back to the bottom of this first page. It says he is unadulterated by the formless realm. So the formless realm is the realm of the Dharmadhatu, and so he's unadulterated by that. That he's not he's pure beyond its articulation, what we think it is. It's beyond conceptualization, and so it's saying that he is non-conceptual. So we all have that ability. Have you had a moment in your meditation or in a discussion or just being by yourself where you felt that you were in a non-conceptual state, in an unconceptual state? Everything was peace. Everything was bliss. Everything was emptiness. Everything was just everything had just all dissolved into just space, what we might say is space. We have to use words to communicate this, but to be in that space of formless realm, there's no words. There's no intellectualization. It's beyond all that. Does that make sense? Anybody want to comment on that?
Oh, yes, I want to comment on that because I have a different understanding.
Okay.
We're going to have an argument here because,
No arguments.
okay,
No arguments.
okay, we're going to have a disagreement here. Let's not call it an argument. So there's three realms. The three realms are the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm.
That's right.
Now, the form realms and the formless realms correspond to different levels of jhana. There are 8 levels of jhana, and for our form, for have on the level of the formless levels, which I can't rattle them all up, but there's consciousness, nothingness, neither perception or non-perception, and I'm leaving one out. But those are 3 of the 4 levels of the formless realm. And basically what happens is when one attains these very high meditative states, but is still attached to them, and then dies without having attained enlightenment, as an arhat typically, one is reborn in these formless realms. But the Buddha, because he's attained these formless jhanas, but also has attained the enlightenment, he's gone beyond the formless realms. So as he's not attached to them, he realizes the emptiness of these realms just like and illusory nature just like the other realms. Whereas somebody who's just attained a very high level of meditation is attached to them and sees them as the ultimate uh, realization. So that's what it's talking about here when it's talking about the formless realms, in my opinion. So it's not quite the Dharma Dhatu. It's something different.
Okay. Anybody have any comments? Further thoughts?
I mean, maybe in this context, what would be, why would unadulterated have value? Like, how is that different from any other type of activity there in these realms?
Well,
Is it
all comes
mixing with
down
their own view or something like that?
it all comes down to attachment. Whether I mean these states are supposed to be extremely pleasant, a very refined form of pleasure, of course, but extremely pleasant, and you can get attached to that pleasure. And if you're attached to that pleasure, you're going to want to be reborn in a similar state when you die, and that's what happens to people who have attained these very high meditative states, but still are attached to the pleasure which comes from these, whether they're the form realms or the formless realms. But the Buddha, having transcended the idea of being attached to any kind of pleasure, has transcended these two, the form and the formless realms.
So so just to clarify the point just a little bit more, the three realms that Bernie's speaking about is the first realm is the desire and form realm. That's the first realm. The second one is the desireless form realm. And the third one is the desireless formless realm. So the desire form realm would be the realm that we exist in, our ordinary nature.
Kamaloka.
The Kamaloka. And the next one is the Rupaloka. It's a way of saying it in Sanskrit. And that is the desireless form realm. And that would be like the Sambhogagaya. So the Nirmanakaya, that's to say, the highest level of the emanation of Buddha would be in that form desire realm. That would be the Kamaloka, as Bernie just said. The Sambhogagaya realm would be the desireless, but yet there are these forms that we have created. It's an intelligent, it's an intellectual realm. It's an intellectual field that we manifest, that we create. Humans create and so on, and we have conversation in that and so on with ourselves and with each other.
Are you talking about thought forms?
What's that?
Are you talking about thought forms?
Dot forms?
Thought forms.
Thought forms, yes. Thought forms. But, all the iconography, all the Sambhogagaya, all the imagery and so on is within that realm. But it's a desireless realm. But we imagine ourselves, through our meditations and so on, through our practices, to be those forms. We do that to help us to stabilize our understanding, our embodiment of that. So we use these thought forms to help us to do that. Then the next one is the arupa, which means without form. So it's the formless, desireless realm. So this would be the realm of being a bodhisattva. This would be being a Buddha, but not to return. A Buddha doesn't return to this. It is beyond this. So a bodhisattva may be kind of going back and forth in this. Still an ordinary being in terms of having a body, being a human being, and so on. But the mind is been purified to the point of not falling backwards, of not falling away from this. So the unadulterated. So it may be present, it's present, but at the same time, it's not being contaminated by it. It's not being made impure by thoughts and so on. It's beyond that. There's a level of purity there. So that's the way I look at it. That's the way I want to expand on what Bernie said and so on. So, the invitation is for everybody to look at this themselves. There's books written about this, and to be able to experience this through your own practices and meditation practices. Anybody else have a comment? Okay. So it says he is free from suffering. So the Buddha is suffering at this level. So if we have this level, if we recognize, if we have cleared away all the obstacles, and what's left is our Buddha nature, our true nature, is free from suffering. There is no suffering in that Buddha mind, in that Buddha experience. And we have that ability within ourselves. We may have experienced it from time to time, but it's not stable. But we do have experience with it. So it's like glimpse after glimpse of this, of being able to recognize this and so on. But we come back to our ordinariness until we can achieve, the level of nirvana and go beyond the level of nirvana to be, Buddha, to be that awakened one. Then he is liberated from the skandas. So now the skandas. So what are the skandas? Would anybody like to comment on that? The 5 skandas?
I don't want to monopolize the conversation, so if somebody else wants to say something about the skandas, they can.
Well, no, go right ahead, please.
Okay, well, there are 5 skandas, and here again, we're going to test my memory because the first skanda is the skanda of form, which is generally what we take to be the external world, but in Buddhism tends to be more phenomenalistic, so it talks about the external world in terms of its sensory qualities, that which can be seen, that which can be heard, that which can be touched, that which can be smelled, and let's see, which sense did I leave out? Heard,
seeing,
yeah.
Seeing.
So yeah, so
tasting,
for
smelling.
Buddha, yeah, for tasting, of course. So for Buddhists, it's kind of a phenomenon. It always has this sort of phenomenalistic bias, but that's what's considered the form realms. Everything external which can be sensed is considered the form realm. And then there's the realm of feeling, whether something is causes pleasure or pain upon being sensed. When you sense something, whether it's a painful sensation, typically heat or cold or pressure or pain, anything like that, or pleasure. You can have pleasant sensations too, physically pleasant sensations, or pleasant smells or unpleasant smells. Then there's the level of perception, which is the raw sensation of external phenomena. So you have the external phenomena, and then they touch your senses, and there's a response, and that sort of physical response is considered the level of sensation. Then there's the 4th skanda, which is a little bit hard to describe because it's sort of a grab bag. It's usually translated as formations. Formations is considered all the sort of mental events other than thinking itself that occurs, all the emotions and all the everything positive or negative which can occur in the mind, which is sort of got a constant nature like that. And the fifth level, the fifth skanda, is what they call the sixth consciousness. For each sense, there's considered to be a different consciousness in Buddhism. There's the consciousness which hears, the consciousness which sees, and so on. And of course, there's the mental consciousness, which is just the awareness of inner thoughts. So that's the sixth consciousness. So that's just the way Buddhists divided up reality to keep from falling into the idea that there's some sort of eternal, permanent ego by analyzing reality in that sense. That's the five skandhas.
All right, so now let's go back to the book, but use the glossary. Everybody has a copy of the glossary, or at least has it on your computer, and look at skanda in the glossary, which is G.412. Because here, they use these words to explain it. What Bernie said is correct. But it says the constituents that make up a being's existence. The constituents. So the constituent of forms. That we see all these forms. We're recognizing all these forms. We're processing things. So skanda, the word skanda means heap or aggregates. So it's the aggregates of all these forms, all these things that we see, all these things that we engage with. The next one is all the heaps, all the sensations that we experience, all the feelings that we have. It's a heap of those, a lifetime of those. This is the skandas. This is what we have to deal with. This is what it is to be a human being. That we have these heaps, we have these aggregates. The next one is the identifications. We have these heap of identifications, these things that we agree upon, that we're going to call this a table, we're going to call this a bell, we're going to call this a pencil, we're going to call this the color black, all these conventions that we agree upon, all these identifications of all these things that we experience. So that's the third one. Then the fourth one is the mental activities. So the mental activities are those things that we engage in, all the role plays, all the things that we are thinking about, all the thought forms that we are going through, the way in which all these things work together, and so on, is the fourth one. So in a lifetime, how many of those do we go through? And those are all influence in our aggregate, who we are. They're all influence to us. We can't ignore them. We can put them to rest. We can control them. And then the fifth one is the consciousness. So the aggregate of consciousness, how many different things have we experienced? How many different things have come to our lives, have come to our brains, have come to our senses and so on, that are part of who we are. So we could say that as men, we have certain things. As women, we have certain things. As young people, we have certain things. As older people, we have certain things. We're conscious of those things, and so some of these things we can share. Some of these things we can try and help other people to experience that through themselves. But there are some things that are just innate. We can't change the fact that, whether we're a man or a woman, or we're young or we're old, those kinds of things. So these heaps, these skandhas, are the result of that. So it's like our background. It's who we are. Does that make any sense? Did I speak that right? Did Bernie speak that right? Does anybody have comments?
It's all in the Abhidharma. This is all kind of Abhidharma material. If you want to study this, you have to study the Abhidharma.
Well, that's fine. There's lots of places to look at it, but we have to deal with it now.
Yeah,
You know, we see these words in our prayers, we see these words in our practices, so we're not able to go to the Abhidharma right now. We got to deal with
right,
this
sure.
now. Does that make sense?
Well, of course, there are
So
weak
can
points.
we say in?
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, is it fair to say in our European plain language that this is kind of our stereotypes, our assumptions, and idiosyncrasies? Um,
What you mean, the skandhas?
Yes.
yes.
Well, the skandha is just one way of dividing up reality. It's now there are stereotypes and things like that, but they would tend to fall into
Well, this is
uh,
our
thoughts.
phenomenal
Right,
stereotypes. Would you agree with that? It's
right.
phenomenal.
Well, it's a way of it's just a way of analyzing experience that Buddha recommended as a form of understanding what the body and mind actually were.
So,
And maybe
I'd like
those
to
are
say,
also include some kind of more abstract ideas like what is a triangle, like some mathematical
Yeah,
uh,
or they're all
abstract things that
considered
everybody can.
abstract thought in Abhidharma. Abstract thoughts are not considered things. They're considered just thoughts, and they're not part of this analysis. They would just be considered thoughts in the mind. So anything like a triangle or any kind of conceptual thing would be considered just another thought and not particularly uh, reach the level of the skandhas, which is more a description of both interior and external reality. So that would be the difference right there.
Kunga
So
turned his microphone
Mm-hmm.
on. I think he might like to add
okay,
something.
go ahead, Kunga. Like, see what you want to say.
Yeah.
yeah, I just wanted to say for me, the image of them being like a river, they're kind of flowing. They're not set. Those things are changing all the times. If we just applied it to a human being, what we perceive as our form is constantly changing. What other people are constantly changing. All those things, our feelings are constantly changing. Just when you feel, you think your feeling going to last forever, but before long you get bored with it, and something that felt good doesn't feel good anymore. Something that felt bad you don't notice anymore. All those things are temporary, um, and in process. That's the way it makes sense to me.
Okay, yeah, that's correct. That's part of the human condition, isn't it? To be human is to change.
Yeah, so it's good not to, even though we're using these designations, not to be too attached to them, because they're fluid.
Right. So the statement here in this, it says he is liberated from the skandhas. So when we attain that, when we have arrived at or removed the blockages, what's revealed is our true nature, and it's free of those skandhas. We don't become a human being anymore. We're beyond that, or we're a complete human being, or we're a Buddha, whatever words you want to use. We're awakened or something. We're beyond all the um, all the intellectualization of that, the phenomenal nature of that. To have that lucidity, that clarity of of mind, and even the mind itself is it becomes non-conceptual.
Right. I guess a simple way to say that is, the Heart Sutra, and which talks about emptiness, it lists the five skandhas as one of the things that don't really exist. They're just our conceptual labels for talking about things.
Right. So the next sentence here, it says he is separated from the dhtuts. So the dhtuts are the sense faculties. So if we look at dhatus, look it up in the glossary. So that is G122. So let's look at that and see how this defines that. So it says, often translated as elements, that the dhatus are often translated as elements, commonly in the context of the 18 elements of sensory experience, the 6 sense faculties, their respective objects, and the 6 sensory consciousnesses, although the term has a wide range of other meanings. Although, along with the skandas and ayatanas, one of the 3 major categories in the taxonomy of phenomena in the sutra literature. So the taxonomy, just to define the word, means a classification system, a way of classifying this. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to, maybe it's our psyche or whatever you want to call it. We're trying to understand, who we are as human beings, and see how that blocks us. Being a human being is a stepping stone to get to be awakened. But at the same time, if we're attached to being a human being, we don't get to that level of being able of clarity, of clearing things away. So we have to understand these things at this very base level. So, for myself, speaking for myself, it's not that I read this one time and got it. This is stuff that I've been living with for the past, 30 years or something like that. And every time I come to it, I seem to always have a different way of looking at it, another experience and way to be able to understand it and so on. But also, it doesn't stop the fact that I can have that clarity, I can have that moment of meditative bliss, if you will, to be able to experience the awakening. So the faculties are the brain, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the skin that is touching things, and the objects of those sense faculties. The objects of sight, the objects of sounds, the objects of smells, the objects of taste, of textures, of sensations. So it says again that he is separated from the dhatus. He's separated from these sense fields. If you can imagine, being in out in space, or some place, where there's a sense deprivation, where you don't have these things, to your body, your brain is going. Some people go mad in this kind of a situation. When people go into an echoic chamber, when they are making devices, listening devices, amplifiers, and things like that, they have anechoic chambers that they lock people. Well, they close the door, and you go in, you can't hear a thing, and it drives some people. They get very uncomfortable with it, because it's a sense deprivation. Alex is shaking his head. You probably know what I'm talking about. Something like that. So these dhatus again include the consciousness that it is separated from the consciousness, the awareness of these things. The subjective and the objective thoughts of objects, personal and observational, they pass away. You go beyond that. You're separated from the dhatus. You're separated from human experience. You're not attached to human experience. It's human experience that has brought you to this point, but you're able to cut through and cross over from this into that Buddha nature, into that true nature. So this is when we have a meditative experience, where we are beyond all this, this is, we don't realize it that we've had that meditative experience until we kind of fall back into our ordinary mindset again, into our ordinariness. Then we say, oh, I just had this time, this period, I had this experience where I didn't exist anymore. You probably have heard about this if you haven't experienced it. Time stands still. Was it 5 minutes or was it an hour? Things like that. So this is part of the meditative practice, stages of meditation. Anybody want to comment on this?
The dhatus?
Yeah.
Not particular. Not anything that I don't have anything to add, which is to what's in the glossary. It's just that generally in any sensation, there's considered to be three parts: the external object, the sensory organ, and the consciousness, which perceives the sense is the mental perceptions. So the dhatu is just multiplied by 6 for each of the 6 senses, where the 6th sense is one we don't usually think of, but it's just the mind itself. So you have 18 dhatus in total.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just,
Uh,
go ahead, Alex.
I just want to share that although I don't have much of meditation experience or like a lot of practice, once in a while I was able to get to some state of consciousness that's totally separated from senses, and when you come back, you may forget what day is it, where you are, like any sensory thing that was connected you to the outside world, like temporarily disappears, and it's very interesting place. Because when you're coming back, you don't know where you're sitting, what you're doing, what you're asking yourself these questions, and only after a while you realize, oh, you're still in this place, or you're sitting, or you're lying, and yeah, this is
Would you say waking up from a daily sleep is like this? If you wake up and then you gotta say, oh, what day is today? Oh, what do I got to do today? And you start, rebuilding, all the things that for the time you were asleep, you were cut off from. You don't feel anything. You have no senses. The brain is operating, but you're not feeling things. You're not touching things. You're imagining that maybe you are, but is that a fair analogy, comparison?
Yeah, it's sort of like a dreamless sleep in a way. But so yeah, you just feel yourself, and you feel your own thoughts, but they're not connected to any kind of feelings in terms of sensory,
Yeah.
gravity, or light or touch. Nothing there.
Yeah, if we want to, let's just for the sake of amusement, not that it means much. I want to share a story of something that happened to me. I once went for a 4-week retreat at the Chogyam Trungpa's meditation center in Vermont, and every morning, uh, early in the morning, we would do an external walk. We would walk down from the house down the path which led to the main road, and that path went over a little bridge, and it had been snowing or raining the night before, and the bridge was icy. And when I got on the bridge, I slipped and I fell, and I was laying down on the ground, and absolutely every thought was knocked out of my mind just from the shock of falling like that. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was. It was just my mind was just completely empty. And then as I got up, all this normal everyday consciousness reasserted itself. And somebody came up to me, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm all right." But it was quite an unusual experience to not to be just totally disconnected from everything in your conscious. It's like every light was turned out. All my connections to the past, the present, and the future. When the shock came that when I fell over, I don't think it means very much, but I just thought that experience sounds like what you were talking about. So
I had an experience years ago, 50, 60 years ago, of playing music. And I had an electric guitar in my hands, and I touched the microphone stand, and things were out of phase, and I had a mild electrocution.
electric
And
shock.
I was conscious enough to be able to throw the microphone stand down. I was able to do that to stop it, you know, but I was worthless for the next 2 days. My mind was blown, you know, and I think that's another example. And there were I remember back in those days, that there was a lot of people doing a lot of things, doing a lot of meditation, and some of it was, you know, substance, induced and so on like that. But there was an album or there was a song that was called "If I Could Only Remember My Name," and believe it or not, I know exactly what that is. And this is the kind of experience that we're talking about, that you become completely unattached from anything as a human being that you're used to being attached to. And it arouses a terror within you, if you're not prepared for it. And that's why they say, many times that, you should do these things the first time with a guide, because you will experience things that, bend reality of what you think it is.
I had a similar experience like that. I mean, I don't remember much, just simply waking up after a sleep and for the first second or so, not realize not realizing who I was or where I was or why I was here. And it was all very, I remember just feeling really terrified.
Right. But then if you can do that, through a meditative process, stages of meditation, then you are enjoying that, because you've overcome the fear. You
Yeah,
know,
well, actually, in my opinion, the value of these kind of states where you sort of crush your normal everyday consciousness for a little while was that not so much being outside of your normal consciousness is when consciousness begins to come back for the first time. You can see what it is, because it's in comparison to what you had before, which is almost nothing. And each level that comes back, you're just more aware of what everyday consciousness is, where we aren't usually aware of it because it's so commonplace. It's like they say, fish don't know that they're in the water, they're in the ocean, because it's just their environment. It's a constant environment. But when thoughts go away for a while and then they start to come back, then you see what thoughts really are for the first time.
I remember, in meditation and so on, if I could only turn my mind off, if I can stop
Yeah.
these thoughts, because the brain, that's its job, to be thinking. And now, when you've had a taste of non-thought, of being in that meditative state, that's beyond the skandas, it's beyond the dhtuts, and you come into your regular consciousness, you realize the mind is always going. There's always thoughts, always. If I could only turn these thoughts off, you know, and it becomes, you know, and then what we do is we begin to build walls. You know, maybe somebody can speak about that better than I can, but we begin to build walls to protect ourselves from these thoughts because, you know, we are Buddhas. And when we don't have things to understanding, you know, we begin to have clairvoyance and things like that. You probably have heard about that. And, you know, my goodness, you know, all these things that are coming in and bombarding us and so on, how do we protect ourselves from those? Or do we just get to the point where the meditation, we take the meditation with us? We don't come back, we don't come down. You know, we stay in that meditative state and we become, you know, as it says here, we're liberated from the skandas. We're separated from the dhtuts emotionally, figuratively, you know, phenomenally. We have been able to protect ourselves from all this phenomenal stuff that is is what we're always doing. You know, it's the what we say the eight concerns that we have all the time. We're able to break that connection between the gain and loss, pleasure and pain, fame and disgrace, and praise and blame, fame and disgrace, pleasure and pain, gain and loss. Eileen, thank you for coming. I didn't acknowledge that you came in when we were doing our prayers and everything. Do you have any thoughts about this? Do you have any experience with what we're talking about?
Well, I believe through meditation, if you know the technique, like focus on the breath, you can eliminate all the thoughts. Or if you can focus, from what I learned from Dajun Rinpoche, like when we meditate to control the thought, like we visualize the syllable, at the navel, and all the thoughts will, you can eliminate the thought, not forcefully, but it just, you might just become empty.
You see the emptiness of the thought.
I'm sorry?
You see the emptiness of the thought, so there's no point in attaching to it.
Correct. Yes. And if I focus on my breathing, like, I can eliminate all the thoughts. Just focus on the breath.
Do you get to a point where you're not even paying attention to the breath any longer?
Yeah.
And what's that like?
Gradually,
And what's that
gradually like? Just my mind just focus, but without attached to anything. Even though I focus, I wouldn't say an object or anything, just, focus my mind, but not attaching to it.
What brings you back?
Say that again?
What brings you back out of that state of mind?
What brings you back? What bring me back to my mind, if I have to interact, with someone, a lot of time in the past, I just don't respond. But I feel like the other person would get very upset because sometimes I get if they say harsh words to me, and it can upset me, but I don't react, and I'm not sure if I control my feeling or just let go of it, what it's perceiving, but I feel like it doesn't work to the opposite person. That person would get very upset with me. So I I have to engage with the person.
Right.
It's very hard when you try to focus your mind, not react to anything. But in reality, you have to react to it, because I can upset the other person not responding, not being upset what's being said to me.
So is it like a thought that appears, a thought that comes that you can't, that you have to deal with? We can have thoughts just coming and going and not pay attention to them, but then there's a thought that says, or that speaks to us in such a way that says, oh, I've got to interrupt my meditation. I'm coming back into my everyday being a human being out of this meditation because of this thought.
Well, if I'm being by myself, I can continue in that way. But if I have to interact with someone, then, the thought come back.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the next sentence here. It says, he has restrained the ayatanas. He has restrained the ayatanas. He's the Buddha. We as being in this have made an effort, a consciousness to restrain the sense fields. The ayatanas can be described as the sense fields. So if we go to our glossary, to G47, it gives a definition.
G48
So it says,
in my book, G48.
Oh, is that right? Okay, I know there's a
In
couple.
my book, it's G48.
Yeah.
There might be a difference in the version.
Right. So the word ayatanas, it says sometimes translated as sense fields or bases of cognition, basis of awareness. The term usually refers to the 6 sense faculties and their corresponding objects, such as the first 12 of the 18 dhtuts. So the 18 dhtuts we talked about, I don't know whether you wrote them down, but the 18 dhtuts are the faculties and the objects. The eyeballs, the tongue, the nose, those faculties and the objects that they are responding to. So it says the first 12 of these 18 dhtuts are those faculties and those objects, along with the skanda and dhatu, one of the 3 major categories of the taxonomy of phenomena of the sutra literature. So in other words, going back to the ayatanas, it's sometimes referred to as the sense fields. So where there is objects to see and there's something to see it, in that. So it's kind of a abstract way, it's so fundamental, it's abstract, but at the same time, if we concentrate it, we think about it in a meditative kind of an environment to induce a meditation for ourselves and so on, we begin to understand the ayatana, the sense field. This is what we are in. If we close our eyes, we sit in the Varanchana position, we're doing our meditation, we're doing the breathing exercise or whatever, and we begin to think about, well, what are the sense fields? And begin to say, oh, I can liberate myself from that. You know, I can liberate myself, and that's the skandas. I'm liberating myself from that experience as the skandas, the sense fields, the ayatanas. So we begin to get an understanding, a visceral experience, but also a mental experience, but also that leads us to, or by being able to overcome it, our heart center opens up, which is non conceptual, which is beyond all this. And then we see that it's those things, it's the skandas, it's the dhtuts, it's the ayatanas that are pulling us back, pulling us down, pulling us out of that state of mind, out of that state of being free in everyday experience. So we can have a moment of pure meditation where all that goes away. We're beyond the phenomenal nature. We're experiencing what we would call the absolute nature as a true reality. And then we see that we can, through practice, through doing this over and over again, we can stabilize that even though we're getting up off the cushion, even though we're talking to our friends, even though we're driving a car, even though we're doing all the things that we do as ordinary human beings, we're taking that meditation with us. It's the post-meditation state. And if everything else were to stop, if we had the opportunity to just say, well, I'm just going to stop now, I'm just going to sit here at my desk at work or wherever, and I'm just going to let myself figuratively just float away, you can do that. Alex, what do you think of that as a neuroscientist? What do you think about that? Alex, are you floating away?
Well, yes, you can float away, and I think there is like in scriptures there is discussion of this kind of state of mind that we call like dull state of mind,
Dull?
where dull, dull, where you sort of separated from the senses, but at the same time you kind of like in this nebulous cloud. You don't have anything that is clearly like perceived or imagined or like there is just this kind of not nothingness, so to speak. Like no information comes in, no information comes out. You're just aware of yourself, and that's basically it. So and that is not very different from the state of deep sleep, for example. And I think in scriptures they talk that this can be kind of like a sort of like a trap-like state. You don't want, you may want to be there once in a while, but it's not something that you want to aspire to or something you want to often come back to, because it just doesn't bring you much benefit. But it's good to know it to feel it once in a while, I guess, so that you understand how it is not to be captured by thoughts or emotions or sensations. But I think there are higher, more refined states of consciousness, so to speak, that are kind of beyond this pure separation from senses, where there is more awareness, but it's awareness to higher realities or finer realms compared to our like physical or emotional or even like ordinary thoughts about objects.
So just to be clear, so it's a misinterpretation to call that a dull mind. If somebody was experiencing that and had appearances or something, somebody's trying to explain it as being dull, that's not the same experience of having a heightened awareness. But from some point of
Right.
view, it might appear to be dull. Is that what you were
Yes.
saying?
I thought that Alex was saying that was pointing out to a pitfall in meditation where you get to this place where you don't really feel your senses, you don't really think about anything, and you're just kind of sitting there thinking you're having a really good meditation, but really you're just stuck.
But
Nothing really happening.
if you're thinking, you're not in meditation.
Well,
I think that that somehow you need to bring these realizations back into the real world you live in, because it's not. Otherwise, what's the benefit to other beings? You know, you come back, you're back here like, I don't feel anything. Everything's good to me. I'm, you know,
Yeah, but if you've experienced that, how do you tell somebody, what it was? You can say, well, it comes down to a point of you have to experience it yourself. All I can do is tell you how I got there, and if you want to find that out, you can follow my instructions or somebody else's instructions.
I'm just
well,
saying that I think Alex was talking about an experience that's an actual pitfall to meditation, that you can
yeah,
actually get into a point where you're dull and you think you're progressing, but you're not. You're just kind of stuck. That's what I thought
yeah,
he was
it's
talking about.
possible, right? It's possible to get into a state of meditation, which seems very concentrated, but because it's a dull state of mind, you don't, the thoughts are still there, but because your mind is dull, you don't notice them. So that sometimes people confuse that with a profound state of meditation, where actually it's dullness. Meditation has to combine clarity of mind with concentration of mind, and they're kind of opposite because trying to concentrate the mind generally makes you more anxious and makes thoughts appear. Whereas having the clarity of thought is kind of goes into a kind of a dullness. So getting that balance right two between the two is difficult. That's why Buddha compared meditation to tuning a stringed instrument. Either can be too tight or too loose.
Well, it begs the question: are you speaking from experience, or are you speaking vicariously?
Oh, I'm speaking from both. I try to make I try to make my statements accord to what the Buddhist scriptures teach, but also, of course, I'm talking. I mean, I've been meditating now for more than 50 years. I started meditating back in 1972, so I've been doing a lot of meditation. Probably, well, I don't want to comparison is odious, but uh, I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to meditation. At least I can't consider myself enlightened in any particular sense, but I have done a lot of meditation, and I can speak from experience on this subject.
Larry, do you have any comments? Any thoughts about this?
Very, very smart enough to not saying anything.
Okay. Well, I'd like to fast forward just a little bit in this paragraph and go to nirvana, the definition of nirvana.
Oh, wow.
There's Larry.
Yeah. To be honest about it, I have never really done a lot of meditation. I probably should, but most of my practices consist of mantra recitation. I don't know if you consider that the same thing or not.
Well, I mean, my
Yeah,
opinion.
It is kind of meditation, sure.
It has meditation value to it, and I think it's a method to the meditation. So I guess it depends how you want to define meditation. But from what
I usually think of meditation as sitting quietly in a room and watching your breath.
That's one kind of meditation, but there are other
Right.
kinds as well.
Right. Well, we only have a few minutes left in this time slot, so let's talk about Nirvana for a minute. And so, if we go to our glossary and look this up, and in my book it is G.308, so it's going to be in that neighborhood in your book. Nirvana. And so here's a definition for it. It says, in Sanskrit, it means extinguishment. It says, for the causes for samsara are extinguished. The causes for samsara are extinguished. In Tibetan, it's called the transcendence of suffering. So the causes of samsara are extinguished, or, we can think of it as a fire or whatever, and you got a hose of water and it's putting out the fire, putting out the causes. The transcendence of suffering. So, in other words, we're human beings, we're in the ocean of suffering, but we have transcended our attachment to that suffering, to the causes of that suffering, to the results of that suffering, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. The nirvana is that bliss state. I think, in other places you might see it defined as that. Does anybody have any comments about that? What do you think about the meaning of nirvana?
It's one of those terms that's really hard to define, and I really couldn't say too much more about it than the glossary says, but Nirvana is generally considered the goal of Buddhism, and it's the elimination of the ignorance, which is the basis for all the afflictive emotions. So when the ignorance is eliminated, one is acting out of wisdom, then there's naturally the
Nirvana
liberation from the negative emotions.
is Nirvana a phenomenal experience?
Well, it's Nirvana. Well, Nirvana is said to be an illusion, of course, but just like
Yeah.
samsara is an illusion. But that's
Yeah, well, I mean, you've heard the expression. It's like two sides of the same hand. On one side
two
is
sides of
samsara, on the other side is nirvana.
but yeah, but it's distinguished from samsara as being freedom from the afflictive emotions.
But how
I
stable
suppose
is it?
because it's defined relatively to one is defined relative to the other, they can both be seen as relative and not the absolute. So,
Well, I always think it's interesting to put it in human terms to understand it that we're experiencing samsara, we're experiencing nirvana as a human being. So it's part of the phenomenal experience of being a human being. You know, when we can we transcend. So does that reside, if you will, does samsara and nirvana both are present, if you will, in the bodhisattva experience, but to pass through the bodhisattva experience to the Buddha experience is to remain stable in that which is transcendent of that duality. And that samsara and nirvana is a duality. Kunga, what do you think of that?
I I think I think Nirvana is a transcendence of pleasure and pain. So in Nirvana, you're not really feeling any particular pleasure, because like the pleasure in itself is a cause of suffering, and so you like beyond causes of pleasure, and you beyond causes of pain or suffering. So you just look at things as they are, not as it feels they are. So things are still there. It just your attitude to those things change from what I understand, and whereas at some point they may have caused you ecstasy or pain or misery, then you eliminate your ignorance and you realize, uh, there is cause and effect of everything, and shouldn't there be any like we shouldn't make too much fuss about it. I mean, it's just the way things are, and suddenly we get extinguishment of the causes to perceive it in any other way other than what things are, and how they supposed to be.
Okay. Kunga?
I
That,
think
that
is
that's what I can say.
if you're thinking about
Maybe.
relative and absolute bodhicitta, so when we talk about relative bodhicitta, we talk about seeing problems as opportunity to grow our spiritual practice. And then when we think about ultimate bodhicitta, we just think of these things not as problems. So I think that's how I think. And I think Alex is saying the same thing, that it's our perspective on life that changes. So the training the bodhisattva in training is seeing all these challenges in life as spiritual food for their path, but once they reach Buddhahood, it's just food. I mean, it's just path. It's not. There's no reason to. They're just empty, So you don't have to. You don't have to. You're free from that labeling. I think the labeling is what causes the suffering more than anything else.
I think that's a real good point. Yeah, because the labeling is a function of the duality, of the function of the phenomenal nature, and the nirvana is beyond that. We could say it's beyond that, but again, it's subject to a definition. Anybody else have a thought about that?
I guess we also can distinguish nirvana and like maha nirvana or pari nirvana or mahapari nirvana. So I think it's not very difficult for us to get to that place where we be sort of like neutral to looking at things or what's going on, but eventually we have habitual tendencies, and when things suddenly arise, we snap into our own mental judgments about them, and we go back into samsara. you know but if and hopefully that's not gonna happen. That's gonna happen less and less often, and then like most of the time we'll be in nirvana. But I guess coming closer to what Buddha experienced is that where nothing really can can snap you back into ordinary perception. Because you catch your mind right before it gets starts all these deliberations.
So I just, so I think all this discussion begs the question, well, all this is all within, the sutra of the king of Samadhi. So what is the Samadhi? And that's what we're trying to fathom out here, as this, however you want to express it, and that's where we kind of, can trip ourselves up. We can get attached to or get misinterpreted, as the mind of the Buddha or whatever. But in our Buddha nature, in our true nature, when we are free from all these constructs and free from samsara and the notions of nirvana, do we abide within that freedom, or we have the ability to abide within that freedom from that? And that, to have a discussion like this, we can struggle and say, oh, it's this, that, it's the other thing, and so on. But that's the nature of the phenomenal expression, of the phenomenal experience. To say it's this, to give it this designation, is going to fail. And the realization of that is the king of Samadhi. To be able to abide with that, to be able to rest in that. That's to be in that Buddha mind, that awakened mind. To see the limit, or to experience to see the nature of what it is to be a human being.
Yeah, and when you were speaking about this, I think you involved kind of the notion of awareness, that like when seeing the nature of the mind, you're like aware of the true nature of yourself, or not yourself, but your mind, the true nature of your mind. It's clear to you. It's you see through that, and I think it's distinguished. Just coming back to connecting to what we were talking before, that dual state of consciousness is where we are not aware of senses, we're not aware of feelings, and we're also not aware of the nature of the mind. So I think samadhi is, from what I am trying to understand, that samadhi is like that step up, considerably up from that dual state of consciousness where we don't know what's going on around us, and where we are and what is our name.
Do you find this exploration, this conversation that we're having, do you find it to be to create an anxiety within yourself, or or is it an exhilaration, or is it?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah, I'll ask
Oh, yeah.
everybody. Yeah. Do you
No,
find it
that's
exciting? Do you find it terrorizing?
Oh, I don't see anything terrorizing about it. It's actually more like a deeper exploration.
Anybody else have a comment?
Yes.
All right. Well then, thank you, and I hope this was helpful to be able to explore, this, and be able to see that what we're doing is going through an intellectual process to be able to define all this, and so that we can, to classify it and put it into, you know, a certain compartment of our knowledge base. You know, it's part of our database, our knowledge base, and to be able to say, okay, this is when I need to be able to draw on this knowledge base, and this is when I need to leave that knowledge base alone. I can be free of that knowledge base. All right, well, our time has come to an end. Does anybody else have any last comments you'd like to make? Questions?
Um, I just want to ask about the knots that we heard, and
Okay.
Next week.
and in yes, I will like are we going to talk about that later, or or I mean,
Well, I think
do
we
you want
got
to
to cut
discuss
it
that a
off
little
from
bit?
here, but I think it doesn't need a lot of embellishment. A knot is a knot. It's something that becomes, you know, this intellectual knot, this problem, and it's really that simple, you know.
So it's kind of like a pattern of energy. It can be mental, it can be, you know, more physical in the body that kind of traps itself in some state,
yeah,
or
a state of confusion,
habitual mode of operation.
Yeah.
a state of
It's any
confusion.
kind of confusion state. It's any
Yeah,
kind of confused state.
Yes, kind of state of confusion.
yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a very precise definition in Buddhist terms.
All right, but I think the
Okay.
point is to study the sutras, you know, because we're realizing, you know, these things that we take for granted, and to be able to suss these things out and to identify our knowledge base and to be what it is to be free of that knowledge base. You know, to be in a state of samadhi, you know, where, you know, we can control that.
Uh,
All right. I'll do a short dedication for the merit that we have generated by this conversation, this investigation, for the Dekarma prayer. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate word of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Trikumpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of
till the end
samsara.
of samsara.
Sarva Mangalam. And all the other great masters. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you all very much. Not everybody can have this conversation, so not that we're any better than anybody else, but you know, we've worked hard to get to where we are, and we wish to share it with all beings. Thank you. Have a good rest of the week. See you soon. Thank you. Good night. Thank you, Alex.
Stay warm.